Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Donald Trump woke up this morning, 19 days before the midterms, ready to serve up some red meat for his Republican base by beating the drum on immigration, prompted by video of Honduran migrants making their way north, some on their way to the U.S. Trump today tweeted about the group, quote, including many criminals vowing to cut aid to Honduras if the migrants weren't stopped, even suggesting the U.S. military may close the southern border. And according to the Washington Post, quote, Trump's comments come as he's been urging fellow Republicans to make immigration a central issue in the closing weeks of their midterm election campaigns and blaming Democrats for his inability to pass immigration legislation in the GOP-controlled Congress. Rosie, Stephen, Eugene are back. They control, I mean, you can blame the Democrats for some things. Not passing laws isn't one of them. Republicans control everything.
Republicans control everything. The Democrats deserve criticism when they controlled everything for not solving this problem in the first years of the Obama administration. But let's understand what this is. This is a deliberate strategy of incitement. In American politics, our leaders used to go out and try to persuade the American people that their side was perhaps a little bit more correct than the other side. There's never been a genteel period of American politics, but what we're seeing here is something new, particularly from a president. He uses lying at mass rallies to scapegoat minority populations. He alleges conspiracies. He creates a sense of mass victimization and then positions himself as the avenger on behalf of the victims, defending them from the invading horde of migrants coming from the south, approaching the border. This is all BS of the first order. When you see Newt Gingrich up there, one of the most singularly pernicious forces in the history of American politics, a man who more than any other has wrecked the collegiality, the comedy, who began and begat this era of partisan warfare. When you see his smug smirk talking about Caravan and Kavanaugh, Caravan and Kavanaugh, the Caravan. These are vulnerable people fleeing some of the most violence-ravaged places on earth. And why do they walk for 2,000 miles? Because of the power of an idea. That idea is this place.
This country.
America.
Yes.
A place where people are free and they are safe. And the idea that when a mother, through suffering, through abuse, through risk, and sometimes death around them, when they reach the border and they see a uniform with an American flag and they are no longer safe, but that baby is ripped away and put into an internment camp, this is a moral outrage that harkens to the worst excesses in the history of the country, to the separation of families at the slave auction blocks, to the separation of Native American families.
It is Friday, the 19th of October of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. That is indeed the case. And the French 77s are, if they're not already virtually mixed, they will be right away. Well, so take care and stay tuned for that, because the French 77 is the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. Don't take my word for it. Try it. Well. Trump had another one of his hate rallies, this time in Montana. And I got to tell you, I've been to Montana, and I've talked to a lot of Montanans. And one thing that you realize after you've hung out with some Montanans is that their sky, the Montana sky, is so big it can hold all the hot air in the world. It does. So it can take on more. That's why Trump is able to go there. Yeah, so apparently body slamming a reporter, coming on the heels of a reporter being disemboweled while he was alive, is okay. That's a good thing. Because these reporters, wherever they are the enemy of the people, and they should be made to suffer. And Trump's brown shirt hate-mongering audience loved it. Yeah, and then Jim Acosta tried to interview one who had made a cutting sign with his thumb across his throat during the rally, right at Jim Acosta, when Trump said, yeah, you know, body slamming a reporter and being arrested for that's nothing to be ashamed about. So this kid, around 20 or 30, somewhere around there, made this gesture at Jim Acosta. So Jim Acosta, as any good reporter would do, well, what were you thinking? Can you tell me about what you did? And the guy just laughed in his face. I didn't see an embarrassed person, being put on the spot. I saw someone laughing at Jim Acosta for having the temerity to think that he could actually come up and ask a question about what Trump and that guy wants to do to that reporter. He was laughing because I think that he was seeing himself body slamming Jim Acosta, and then maybe disemboweling him while he was still alive. I mean, that's the thing to do to these goddamn enemies of the state, these journalists. This is the message that's getting put out there. And if some no-name in backwater Montana can be motivated so easily, I would think that maybe some dictators around the world might be so inclined. And it looks like they are. We are no longer the moral leader in the world. And that was exemplified there by Steve Schmidt at the top. And Newt Gingrich has a lot to atone for what he did and what he continues to do. There will be a reckoning, Newt. And the horn of Gabriel will announce the coming of justice. What's on the rest of the menu today? Well, of course, here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, a black teen did not like being called the N-word. So her Wisconsin high school suspended her. Yeah, you don't like being called the N-word? Well, don't come to school. Trump economic advisor Larry, things go better with Coke. Kudlow called Justin Trudeau that little punk kid running Canada. And lawmakers demand full disclosure of Trump's financial ties to Saudi Arabia amid accusations he's conspiring to cover up the Khashoggi murder. Some people would call that being an accomplice to the murder. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where more charges are leveled that Devin Nunes hid evidence on Trump and Russian meddling. Even more evidence. And America's archaeology data keeps disappearing, even though the law says the government is supposed to preserve it. That belongs in a museum. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to our homepage at netrootsradio.com. There are links there in which you can utilize then to determine if you are registered to vote, and there are still many states left that you can still register to vote. So please first determine that you are registered to vote, and then register to vote. And then after that, I got my ballot in the mail. I live in the great state of Oregon where it's all mail-in ballot. It's all automatic registration. And I got to tell you, we get a pretty high turnout because of it. Exactly what the Republicans hate. Because you can't win if people vote. Are you kidding me? No one likes their policies. There's a few out there, about a third, always been about a third, that just love the hate. And the idea that they can kick people, especially if they're of color. But we make it easy for voters to vote, and people vote. So please go out there and vote. When I think of the bloodshed so that people had the right to vote, I can't bring myself to not vote. There's always something to vote for. Always. Look at it that way. Okay, so then scroll to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. The chat room link is on the rightish of the page, and Kelly Lincoln monitors that, and she does a fine job. She also does a fine job on her shows on Saturday, the first being At the Table with Kelly Lincoln, and that begins at 3 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. on the East Coast, and then a few hours later, she teams up with Ricky, and they command the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour. And that begins at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast. It is a power hour for all power hours to gauge themselves by. That's right. Okay, then take a gander from the chat room link there on the rightish of the page at netrootsradio.com, and then you will notice at the leftish of the page there the contribute button. Please become a Patreon of Netroots Radio. It's the only way that we can keep these bills paid so Resistance Radio can continue resisting. We're not like Trump and his family. We pay our bills. We don't stiff people. Jeez. I don't know. Maybe this guy needs to be stiffed a few times. I don't think that it matters. But regardless, please do become a Patreon. And those that have, thank you for your generosity. We are truly unable to do this without you. Follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Check us out over on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And I also post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime at Daily Co's, where I can also be found as Justice Putnam. That show notes and links diary, by the way, folks, for those of you who are just tuning in, is actually an integral part to this whole endeavor because we are a multimedia operation. And if we could utilize the overhead projector, we'd get that in here too. Okay? Just saying, it's multimedia. We don't fool around with that. Okay, so do also follow the show at Facebook, and you can follow us on Twitter at Cookbook West. Yeah, a little anomaly, but just start putting in West Coast Cookbook, and at Cookbook West will show up, and you can follow us there too. Pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, yes, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes. I don't know, Google Play. We're all over the place. Does Google still have Google Play? Do they get rid of that when they got rid of the Google Plus, whatever it is that they had? Okay, well, thank you for that. And you can also get podcasts of us wherever fine podcasts. And also not so fine podcasts can be found because they're all there. Alrighty, well, let's get on with this first article here. I just love these stories because I thought John Roberts said we didn't have racism in America anymore. There's no more prejudice. Look, you got a black president. Yeah, well, we got black quarterbacks too, but I don't think that's really, lessen the invective directed at people of color, whoever they might be. I'm so old, I remember when there was actual debates on the weekends on sports shows about whether a black player had the intellectual acumen to really play quarterback. And they kept their jobs. Yeah, I'd be firing their ass if they ever did that here on Netroots Radio. We don't cotton that kind of thinking. Okay, the great T-Bog over at Raw Story brings us this first article. It's a struggle every morning, a black student at a Wisconsin high school says, as she was suspended after finally protesting being called the N-word multiple times. According to WDJT TV, Greendale High School junior Shanice Knox was suspended last month after arguing with another student who had slurred her, leading school authorities to call the police. Yeah, there's a black person talking to a white person in heated tones. I think there's going to be a murder. And they don't mean the white person, killing the other, the black girl. No, they don't think that. The black girls hulk up. Okay? Yeah, Mothra. They become like Mothra, I think. The report stated Knox claimed another girl called her the N-word, and when she finally defended herself, both students were hauled into the school office, which ended with her being suspended for 1 day and the white student, go merrily on your way. We got into an argument because she said she thought the N-word was something that could be said, Knox recalled. Deania Mariette, Knox's mother, was stunned by the disciplinary measure, saying, "How could you suspend the victim of a racial slur?" Well, I can tell you how. Look where you are. All right. According to friends of Knox, racial slurs at the school are commonplace. You have people that will just say the N-word freely in the hallways and not realize the magnitude the word has. Senior Yamina Powell explained. As fellow senior Simone McLean added, "I shouldn't have to be afraid to come to school because I feel like I'm going to get angry because somebody's saying something racist." They're not being suspended because, well, they're being suspended for not being, deferential to white authority is really what it gets down to here. Okay? Now, I always love how bureaucrats, administrative bureaucrats, cite privacy. They can't talk about this particular case because of the privacy for the student. And yet the student is the one making it public. Citing student privacy restrictions, administrators at the school issued a statement reading, "District administration takes every student, family, and staff concern seriously and investigates all matters brought to our attention. Threats, hate speech, and harassment have no place in our school community." And then it suddenly turned from this, nondescript geographical locution to, "In accordance with federal student privacy laws, we are not able to provide specifics regarding the incident and student consequences referenced. We can tell you that the students involved in this situation have been counseled, and appropriate school actions have been taken in accordance with district practice. School administration continues to offer to work with the student and her mother to ensure she feels safe at school." These uppity blah, 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 blah. Now, according to the student's mother, the response is not enough, and especially if it was put in that accent, I would get pretty riled up, and that's why I did it. And she wants the suspension stricken from her daughter's school record. Well, that would be the least of it. I suppose maybe some sensitivity training is in store here. Next offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is from the Toronto store by, yes, that Daniel Dale. Mm-hmm. An official in the Trump administration privately referred to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as, quote, that little punk kid running Canada. And that was told to the reporter by another Trump official at an event on Wednesday. Larry Kudlow, known here, but according to the Netroots radio style manual, it says right here, when referring to Larry Kudlow, he must always be referred to Larry Things Go Better with Coke Kudlow. All right, so I've achieved my responsibility as mandated by the style manual, and I ought to know because I wrote it. Well, Larry Things Go Better with Coke Kudlow, Trump's chief economic advisor, recounted the story at an invitation-only dinner hosted by the American Spectator. And the Toronto Star refers to it as a conservative magazine. I think the Netroots Radio Style Manual says that when referring to the American Spectator, it's supposed to be known as a right-wing rag. Okay? We try to use poetry here as much as we can. Right-wing rag. According to the Washington Examiner, another right-wing rag, by the way, which was in attendance because they always are, Kudlow said that one of his friends in the White House, who will go unnamed, said they were pleased they had managed to come to a trade agreement with Canada, despite Trudeau. We didn't walk away. We didn't end it. We made a deal, all right. Spite that little punk kid running Canada, we still made it, Kudlow said. And I've had some wonderful run-ins with him. Well, you know what, Larry? Things go better with Coke, Kudlow. Justin Trudeau can mop the floor with, really with what you don't know about economics. All right? Trump and his aides, including Kudlow, had hurled public insults at Trudeau during the contentious negotiations on the future of NAFTA. But Trump's language brightened 2 weeks ago when they announced their deal, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Trump called Trudeau a good person who is doing a good job, and he declared the bilateral tensions had ended, which in Trump world means that they're ongoing and will be ramped up because that's the way Trump lives. Common Dreams brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump continues to provide cover for Saudi Arabia while making no moves to hold the kingdom accountable for the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Democratic senators have demanded records detailing any and all financial ties that Trump has with the Saudis. Noting that the Trump organization's longtime business relationships with the Saudi government and royal family are well known and a matter of public record, and let me remind you, Trump says, I have no business with them, never have. Okay, I'm just saying. He says that, and he said it last night to his people at his hate rally. Do they believe it? Yeah, I think they do, because well, we'll get into that argument some other time. And so 11 Democratic lawmakers sent a letter on Wednesday late demanding information on whether the Saudis have given Trump anything of monetary value since he was elected in 2016, a direct violation of the U.S. Constitution's emolument clause, and whether Trump has discussed potential investments with the kingdom since announcing his campaign in 2015. It is imperative that the administration's sanctions determination and U.S. policy towards Saudi Arabia generally are not influenced by any conflicts of interest that may exist because of your or your family's deep financial ties to Saudi Arabia, reads the letter, which was signed by Jeff Merkley, one of my senators here in Oregon. Thank you, Jeff. On Thursday morning, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo emerged from the White House after briefing Trump on his recent trip to Saudi Arabia and Turkey, where he was just laughing it up with MBS. They were having a good old time, probably talking about how great it was to disembowel a reporter while he was still alive. That's always good for a few laughs. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he told President Trump the U.S. should give Saudi Arabia a few more days to complete the investigation into the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and that was, tweeted out by CNN. Well, the letter was sent a day after Trump scolded the Turkish government, the news media, and the international community for suggesting that the Saudis were behind Khashoggi's killing at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October 2nd. Yeah. You're saying they're guilty before proven innocent. Well, you knew it was going to happen before it happened, and you did nothing at the very least. And I think evidence will point that you are maybe an active participant. In this reporter's opinion, of course. Evidence of a murder by Saudi operatives has mounted since his disappearance, with Turkish officials saying an audio recording reveals that Khashoggi was beaten upon entering the consulate, etc., 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 and he was disemboweled while he was still alive. The Democrats' demands also coincided with a wire transfer of $100 million that was sent to the U.S. from Saudi Arabia on Wednesday night. And a U.S. official told the New York Times that that's just a coincidence. While Trump said Tuesday that he has no financial interest in Saudi Arabia, he has boasted in the recent past that he makes a lot of money from the kingdom. And the president's we don't use the P word here at Networks Radio. Trump's clear financial ties to the Saudis and his repeated lies about the entanglements amount to an explicit violation of his oath of office. Right now, at this moment, it appears that the President of the United States is assisting a foreign government in a conspiracy to obstruct justice in the political murder of a resident of the United States. And it is fair to say that he's doing so because to do otherwise would be detrimental to his personal business interest, and that was Charles Pierce writing in the Esquire yesterday. With evidence that the Saudis have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in recent months at Trump's hotels, which he has not divested his financial interest, Pierce added, Trump is unquestionably violating the Constitution. And moreover, Pierce wrote, there is also absolutely no question that this hedging about the murderous Saudi royalty for reasons that are very likely to have as much or more to do with his business interests as they do with oil or some vague threat from Iran, is precisely what the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution was designed to prevent. But hey, Trump's a rule breaker. Come on. He's just a rogue. He's a rogue doing it his way. Well, I think Trump looks at all of these travesties, the disembowelment of a Washington Post journalist, as not really being personal. It's just business. Let's get to our break, and then when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, another A Star is Born is born. We all know what happens when producers in Hollywood have a proven formula, so the success of the new A Star is Born shouldn't be a surprise. Counting a 1932 film with the same plot but a different title, this is the fifth iteration of this male-female celebrity relationship drama featuring an ascendant female star on a reverse career trajectory from her love interest. Between the 1957 one and the Streisand-Christopherson picture in '76, the stars went from the acting world to the music world as the latter's profile increased. Yes, the remakes do update, and in this new star there's a sort of interesting, if superficial, overlay of the rock versus pop thing going on within the standard pillorying of the cold, callous industry. As well, there's an update on gender roles in this one, and on the way alcoholism is treated. As a piece of movie making, this A Star is Born is fine. It's Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, and it's clear that he's picked up a thing or two in his storied career in front of the camera. He has a scene early on in a parking lot of an all-night grocery store where Cooper's rock icon Jackson coaxes an a cappella performance of some of Ali's original material. He's all a-gaga, pun intended, and this particular magic moment that's central to the picture is wonderfully captured. Pacing does become a minor issue in the film's second half, however. It's clear that this isn't Lady Gaga's last picture, and a tip of the hat is also due Sam Elliott as Jackson's much older brother. As long as celebrity and identity and the public's perception of it continue to define pop culture, this story will remain fascinating, and it's a safe prediction that in another generation or so, we'll have yet another A Star is Born. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. Only a few kinds of animals are known to learn their vocalizations from listening to others. Us, of course, elephants, bats, cetaceans, that's whales and dolphins, pinnipeds, which is walruses, seals, and sea lions, and parrots, hummingbirds, and songbirds. That's it.
When your cat meows or your dog barks, it does that because it has genetically inherited that sound. But birds are like us. Young animals have to hear adults in order to develop normal sounds.
University of Windsor biologist Daniel Mennel. There have been hundreds of conventional experiments done in laboratories with captive birds that support the idea that young birds learn to sing by listening to older birds. These studies also taught us that birds, like humans, have what's called a sensitive period early in life, a time when they are most disposed to learn how to vocalize from their elders. But nobody ever did one of those experiments with wild birds. Observational studies, yes, but no true experiments. Until now, thanks to some wild savanna sparrows.
So this population of savanna sparrows lives on an island in the Bay of Fundy in eastern North America, and it's been studied since the 1960s, and so we know a lot about this population. It means we know every kind of sound that has ever been uttered by a savanna sparrow in this population over the course of many decades.
Mennel and his team installed a series of loudspeakers on the island, and they played new tunes that the sparrows would never have heard otherwise.
The kinds of sounds that we broadcast to the animals were based on savanna sparrows, the same species, but recordings collected on the western coast of North America, many thousands of miles away from our study population.
For 6 years, the researchers broadcast these novel songs to 5 cohorts of sparrows.
Lo and behold, this bird that arrived to breed in the spring of 2014 opened his beak and sang a song that was a perfect match with one of our stimuli.
In all, 26 birds learned their songs from loudspeakers rather than from other birds. And they had the same survival and reproductive success as all the other birds. All but one successfully mated and defended their territories. And 4 additional birds learned songs from birds that had originally learned from the loudspeakers.
What we have now is a very unique, maybe a globally unique population of animals, where some of the animals sing population-typical songs that sound like other animals in their breeding population. But our experimental subjects who are living there now are singing songs that are slightly different.
By returning to the island year after year, Mennel can study not only vocal learning, but the transmission of culture from one generation to the next. There's a lot going on in those bird brains. Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony was full of bravery, integrity, and grace. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And it stands in stark contrast to the cynicism we're so used to seeing. So recently wrote the ACLU Deputy Legal Director, Louise Melling, who went on to say, quote, "We're deeply disappointed in the Senate vote, but this isn't a moment to despair. I saw in recent days a courage that I've never before witnessed on such a massive scale. The voices of survivors poured forth in the aftermath of Dr. Ford's testimony, daring to shake the foundation of a culture and system that has seemed time and time again to be unassailable. We thank Dr. Blasey Ford for her act of civic bravery. She unleashed a collective fearlessness among those of us who have remained silent for too long. She spoke with humanity and honesty of traumas that are difficult for many to imagine, and did so on a Senate floor before flashing cameras and into a microphone that was no match for the deafening truth in her voice. Dr. Blasey Ford's bravery represents," Louise Melling wrote, "what and who we can become as individuals. Imagine what change we can create if we strive to exhibit even an ounce of her courage." Thank you, Dr. Blasey Ford. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The president is on a campaign trek out west, holding a rally in Mesa, Arizona Friday night and heading to Elko, Nevada for one on Saturday. Trump spent Thursday night at a rally in Montana where he praised Congressman Greg Gianforte for assaulting a reporter in his bid for Congress last year, as the United States faced an unfolding crisis over missing journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who is believed to have been killed by Saudi Arabian agents.
But Greg is smart. And by the way, never wrestle him. You understand that? Never. Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my guy. I shouldn't say this because there's nothing to be embarrassed about. So I was in Rome with a lot of the leaders from other countries talking about all sorts of things. And I heard about it. And we endorsed Greg very early. But I had heard that he body slammed a reporter. And he was way up. And I said, oh, this was like the day of the election or just before. And I said, oh, this is terrible. He's going to lose the election. Then I said, well, wait a minute. I know Montana pretty well. I think it might help him. And it did.
To refresh your memory, Gianforte pleaded guilty to assaulting Guardian reporter Ben Jacobs, an altercation that occurred in the final days of Gianforte's special election in May of 2017, when Jacobs tried to interview him about the GOP healthcare plan. The then candidate grabbed Jacobs, threw him to the ground, and punched him. Gianforte subsequently won the special election and later pleaded guilty, receiving a 6-month deferred sentence. Trump's comments about Gianforte drew a response from The Guardian's U.S. editor, who denounced them as an attack on the First Amendment by someone who has taken an oath to defend it. The President of the United States tonight applauded the assault on an American journalist who works for The Guardian, editor John Mulholland said, adding that in the wake of Khashoggi's death, Trump's statement runs the risk of inviting other assaults on journalists, both here and across the world, where they often face far greater threats. We hope decent people will denounce these comments, and the President will see fit to apologize for them. Yeah, right. Of course, that'll never happen. Instead, at his rally in Montana Thursday, Trump doubled down on the hateful rhetoric and even floated a conspiracy theory that George Soros is paying the migrants to come here.
It's going to be an election of those things. Law and order, Kavanaugh. Remember common sense. And remember, it's going to be an election of the caravan. You know what I'm talking about. And now we're starting to find out, and I won't say it 100%, I'll put a little tiny question mark at the end, but we're probably not going to need it, but we have the fake news back there. Fake news. But a lot of money's been passing to people to come up and try and get to the border by election day.
The president threatened Mexico with military action if the government there doesn't stop Central American immigrants from making their way to the U.S. border. Trump is upset that a caravan of at least 4,000 migrants from Honduras is making its way north.
President Trump stepping up threats Thursday, warning he might call up the U.S. military and shut down the southern border in order to stop a large group of migrants from reaching the United States. In a series of tweets Thursday, Trump pointed a finger directly at Mexico. Quote, I must, in the strongest of terms, ask Mexico to stop this onslaught, and if unable to do so, I will call up the U.S. military and close our southern border. Floating the idea of military involvement, setting off a war of words between White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and National Security Advisor John Bolton. Trump's fiery threats, which include cutting off aid to the region, hasn't stopped the caravan from growing since it started heading north on Saturday. Already into the thousands, the group has grown larger as more Hondurans defy their own government and join the trek, making its way through Guatemala, crossing through the lush jungle, navigating through water and challenging terrain, some even overcome by heat during the long journey. Guatemala's president dismissed Trump's warning that financial aid to Central America will be stopped if the caravan is allowed to continue. Trump says halting this mass migration is even more of a priority than a new trade deal with Mexico.
White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and National Security Advisor John Bolton got into a tense shouting match outside the Oval Office on Thursday, reportedly while discussing the Department of Homeland Security and the surge of migrants trekking toward the U.S. border. Mike Pompeo returned home Thursday from his trip to Saudi Arabia and Turkey, ostensibly to find out what happened with Jamal Khashoggi. Although Pompeo wouldn't say it, Trump finally admitted that Khashoggi is probably dead.
Do you believe Jamal Khashoggi is dead?
It certainly looks that way to me. It's very sad. It certainly looks that way. We're waiting for some investigations and waiting for the results, and we'll have them very soon, and I think we'll be making a statement, a very strong statement, but we're waiting for the results of about 3 different investigations, and we should be able to get to the bottom fairly soon.
And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I really can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. I must say that we have the French 77s available for your imbibing pleasure because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. And we always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a projected overnight low in the mid-40s, but in my little microclimate here, where the mothership resides at positively 3rd and Marie, it's registering 39 degrees. It was 42 degrees a few hours ago, and then it dropped to 39, but it is starting to tick up because the sun has peaked over the ridge. Good for that. Well, right now we have fair conditions. Not really any clouds, but ceiling is pretty high right now. So some high ceiling is what we have. Winds are light and variable out of the southwest and will remain so throughout the weekend. Looks like we will be sunny and a bit warmer, with the highs in the mid-80s, overnight lows in the upper 40s. We'll see about that. Though by Monday, we will drop into the low upper 70s, low 80s, and then Tuesday, a very steep drop in temperature. We'll be going down to just a little bit below 70, and will remain that way throughout the week, and with increasing chances of precipitation throughout the week as well. So we are looking forward to that. Overnight lows, once again, should be in the upper 40s, low 50s, and that may be true here where the mothership resides. Ragweed pollen has gone up now to moderate. The air quality index at 26 parts per million is in the good range, though that's not so good if you have breathing difficulties like my elderly mom does. So, it's good for me, not so good for her. Daytime UV index is at 3 in the moderate range. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.22 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is 64% and should drop as the sun rises from the east and will, in all probability, set in the west. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Okay. London is 59 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. Paris is 64 degrees and sunny. Rome is 77 and sunny. Kiev is 62 and fair. Kabul is 58 degrees and fair. Well, not if you're a wedding party, trying to have a wedding party. It's not fair to you. Just saying. Hong Kong is 73 and partly cloudy. 60, let's see, Japan. Tokyo, Japan is 61 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and clear. San Francisco, California is 53 and clear, and New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, and your small craft advisory for gusting winds of 50 to 60 miles per hour persist. So take care. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Tommy Christopher of Share Blue Media brings us this first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like Devin Nunes blocked investigations into worrisome contacts between the Russians, candidate Trump, his family, his businesses, and his campaign, according to Eric Swalwell, a member of his committee. A top member of the House Intelligence Committee has revealed shocking details about how Devin Nunes abused his position as committee chairman to obstruct the Mueller investigation and shield Trump from accountability. In a blistering op-ed for Nunes' hometown Fresno Bee, Representative Eric Swalwell, also of California, said that Nunes blocked committee Democrats from following up on leads about worrisome contacts between the Russians and Trump, his family, his businesses, and his campaign. What's more, Swalwell said, Nunes blocked special counsel Robert Mueller from seeing evidence that many witnesses committed perjury or offered information relevant to the special counsel's work when they testified before the House committee. After months of refusing to release the evidence, specifically transcripts of the witness interviews from the House Russia investigation, Nunes finally relented a few weeks ago, but Swalwell revealed that in doing so, Nunes blocked Democrats from sharing the transcripts with Mueller and with the public. Committee Democrats asked to immediately send the transcripts to Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who has not been allowed to see them under Nunes' rules, Swalwell wrote. There's good reason to believe many witnesses committed perjury or offered information relevant to the Special Counsel's work, but Nunes opposed it, and it was voted down. The investigation turned up a lot of potentially useful information, Swalwell said, but it was kneecapped and ended prematurely by the Republicans on the committee, and Nunes repeatedly blocked efforts to follow up on promising leads. Though incomplete due to Republican obstruction, our investigation did reveal worrisome contacts between the Russians and candidate Trump, Swalwell wrote. Yet every time we sought to learn more, we were blocked. We were sought to test witnesses' accounts by subpoenaing third-party records, such as cell phone, bank and travel records. Republicans refused to allow it. Nunes also refused to release the committee's interview with Putin's favorite congressperson, Dana Rohrabacher, whose friendliness with the Russians has earned him the nickname Russians, or Putin's favorite congressman. I took part in that lengthy interview, and I was disturbed by his contacts with Russia before and during the 2015-16 campaign, Swalwell said. But when Democrats made a motion to release the interview, Nunes killed it. As Americans learn more about Nunes' effort to keep evidence away from Mueller, Nunes is also pushing to release the documents that could harm national security. He hopes that those documents will provide fodder for his repeatedly discredited conspiracy theory that Trump's own Justice Department is out to get him. Devin Nunes has spent the last year and a half covering up for Trump, and he's not about to stop now, at least not until the voters in his district have their say in a few short weeks.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, is an article out of The Conversation, which is, by the way, out of Australia. Author of this article is Keith Kinnig. He's professor, School of Human Evolution and Social Change at Arizona State University. Archaeology. The name conjures up images of someone carefully sifting the sands for traces of the past and then meticulously putting those relics in a museum. But today's archaeology is not just about retrieving artifacts and drawing maps by hand. It also uses the tools of today, 3D imaging, LiDAR scans, GPS mapping, and more. Today, nearly all of the archaeological fieldwork in the U.S. is executed by private firms in response to legal mandates for historic preservation, at a cost of about $1 billion annually. However, only a minuscule fraction of the data from these projects is made accessible or preserved for future research, despite agencies' clear legal obligations to do so. Severe loss of this data is not unusual. It is the norm. Federally mandated projects yield massive amounts of irreplaceable data, particularly on Native American history. Those data are generated for the explicit purpose of benefiting the American public. Yeah, well, what benefits business benefits the public? No, it benefits the boss. Now, back to the article. The primary data include things like counts of different kinds of artifacts, information on fragments of plant and animals found in fire pits, maps and photographs of ruined buildings, dates from charred roof beams, and the chemical composition of paint on pottery. This allows researchers to understand life in the past, inferring, for example, human population size and movement, social organization, trade, and diet. The data further enable archaeologists to study social processes that are important in today's world, but that operate so slowly that they are not perceptible on timescales available in other social sciences. Why does migration occur? Why do migrants groups maintain their identities in some circumstances and adopt new ones in others? What factors have allowed some societies to persist over very long time periods? However, this sort of synthetic research depends upon online access to a wealth of research data and unpublished technical reports, and access to these data also give the researchers the ability to replicate the work or correct errors by the original investigators. What's more, for many ancestral sites, that are critical to maintaining identity and purpose in an increasingly global scale, government agencies are responsible for appropriately managing sites for their scientific, cultural, and educational values, but to do so effectively, they must have access to full documentation of past investigations. About 30,000 legally mandated archaeological investigations are conducted each year in the U.S. These projects are usually documented only in so-called gray literature, reports that in most cases are not readily accessible even to professional archaeologists. Well, maybe I might want to say this about that, since I've been in some businesses that at least touch upon the edges of historical and archaeological sites. Developers do not want archaeologists digging around because it'll shut down the site. There's been a scandal in the Bay Area of the Ohlone tribe's many shell mounds and other areas that they had lived and congregated, and then discovered during a development, and the development gets paved over, or they just hurry up the process. And then when they do get caught and they bring somebody in, they bring in a ringer that no one knows about, who's been paid under the table to sort of move the thing along and take out a few fragments here and there and says, oh yeah, we're done. Well, we better get out of here. We are at the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week, but Netroots Radio will be broadcasting on throughout the weekend, of course, and we will visit with you on Monday, because we do that for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, all through the weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will visit with you on Monday right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.